You're all very welcome. Fáilte rúb. Tá súlam go manis of tainneamh as an trúna. I hope you enjoy the afternoon. We're calling you all friends, so you're all welcome, whoever you are. I've been asked a number of times already today, did I work in Banagher? No, I didn't. Did I live in Banagher at any stage? No, I didn't. So why am I kind of getting a job in Banagher today? I don't know, but I am. We listened earlier today to Father Pat Cowilto. And he offered us the lovely image of the oak tree. And the image that Father de Braban 200 years ago planted the acorn of the congregation that has grown out of that acorn to become what we know, who we know as La Sainte Union. I'm going to add a couple of words that he didn't use. He used the whole image of growth, of starting small, and you know how big an oak tree can grow. And I was reminded of, yes, it offers shade. And one of the things that I find, and we as La Sainte Union, when we talk about it, is La Sainte Union came to Banagher 1863. It was really just a couple of years after the famine. Think what that was like. Think of kind of what do they think they were coming to? Where do they think they were coming to? You know, this was all new. And they were welcomed. They were received. They were welcomed. It is very much, it's true, actually. We would never have survived as a group of sisters in Banagher were it not for the people of Banagher itself. And that is true and has been true from the very beginning. We all comment on it when we're talking among ourselves. There's something, as I said, I neither lived nor worked in Banagher, but there's something about Banagher that gets you. Somehow there's an in and out in the house. There's a homeliness and a tafantarut kind of thing about it. Some people would say, oh, well, the Holy Founder was in Banagher, you know, and left a special, grace or blessing there. Yes, that may be so. He did visit Banagher in the early year, first year, too. But it's more than that. It's the relationship between, and a dependency between the sisters and the locals. And the sisters benefited from it over the years, so did the locals. And all I would say is, long may it live, long may it continue, that relationship, because it certainly is the spirit that Jean-Baptiste de Braban, our founder, had in mind. There's a sentence, a phrase in Irish that we all know, Ar scá chéile a wadan na daoine. We live in each other's shadow and shade. And while I wasn't here yesterday, I have seen the preparation that has gone on, and I've heard about preparation that has gone on over the last couple of weeks. I've seen it in the house, I've seen it today, and even, you know what? God is cooperating with us too. Look at the weather He's given us today. And especially important, how important that is for those who are travelling. The people of Banagher always said, Fáilte. And so we're here, like any birthday, we're here to celebrate. Not really to celebrate what we have done, or even what we have done together, but to celebrate and give thanks for what God has done in, with, and through us, all of us. That's what we're celebrating. That is what we're giving thanks for today. And like all good birthday parties, enjoy it. And when you're going out the door, be able to say, that was great. We're proud of being who we are. Thank you.
I've had occasion recently to talk about the phrase, that beats Banagher. And Banagher, of course, beats the devil. And the phrase survived over 200 years, but particularly since 1994 because of the Great Barry's tea ad, which comes on for Christmas. And I almost know it by heart, and I just do a small bit of it. There's something about Christmas, something that gets inside you, something that gets inside the inner child in you. But I've never heard what I heard just there now from Sister Evelyn. I thought it was wonderful. There's something about Banagher that gets inside you. And I think that's something I will cherish hearing today. And she is so spot on about the unique relationship between the convent and the community here. It's just, and always is palpable.
Good afternoon, everybody. I originally offered to come to Banagher to speak about this. I thought I would be sitting in the Brabant House with about 4 people, so it's really lovely to have such a big group here today. So today I'm here to give voice to the founding sisters of the Sainte Union des Sacrés teaching congregation in Ireland from 1863. So today we're here to join the Sainte Union sisters as they celebrate the 200th anniversary of their congregation's foundation in France in 1826. However, more specifically, we're celebrating their continued presence in Banagher, spanning a period of 162 years since their arrival in 1863. For the benefit of those present who may be unfamiliar with the origin of the congregation and their expansion outside of France, I'll take a little time now to share their founding history. La Sainte Union des Sacrés Cœurs, LSU congregation, also known as Holy Union, was founded in Douai, France in 1826 by Father Jean-Baptiste de Brabant. De Brabant had been ordained for less than a year when he was transferred to the town of Douai in northern France. Soon after his arrival in the parish of Saint Jacques in 1826, the new curé assumed the role of spiritual director to a small group of women, which is generally regarded as the foundation of the LSU. The original group of 4, Louise Menessier, Josephine Paulet, Marie Garçon and Lucie Contrain, had gathered in a house in the Place de la Prairie in Douai. There they taught needlework to adult women and they gave religious instruction to the local children. In time, they formed a community of religious. They wore a habit and adopted some rules for themselves. Their attire, consisting of a black frock, apron, and a fichu, which was a small cap trimmed with a narrow plaited ribbon. 2 new members joined the group in 1826, Augustine Moreau, who was an experienced needleworker, and Eugenie Lair. By then, the small community had moved to another house on the Rue St. Alban. In their new home, they continued to provide instruction in religion, needlework, and some primary schooling. Groups of women such as these working with poor adults and children was not unusual in 19th century France. By 1828, de Brabant realised there was a need to provide more formal education in the poor neighbourhood. Teachers were in short supply in Douai, as was the case elsewhere in France. Fortunately for the group, a well-educated 13-year-old girl named Eulalie Ramon, the daughter of a solicitor, had arrived at the school for lessons in needlework. De Brabant asked Eulalie to assist with religious instruction and to take charge of teaching children basic subjects like reading, writing and arithmetic. By accepting this role, Eulalie and de Brabant laid the foundation for a formal school, the first of many for LSU. It also marked the point at which LSU identified as a teaching congregation, providing education to young Catholic children at a time when similar groups of women religious were devoting themselves to the provision of other social needs, such as healthcare, care of the elderly, or orphanages. Newer communities of women religious that emerged from these small groupings differed from the earlier contemplative orders in two ways. They were active outside of the convent, and they were directed by an elected council which was guided by a superior general. This new form of active apostolate and centralised system of governance developed in France in response to the destruction of old religious structures during the Revolution. Unlike their predecessors, who were forced to live and work in enclosed settings, the activities of these women were directed outside the convent, bringing their mission to the wider community. Similar to other congregations established in the 19th century, de Brabant wanted LSU members to be part of an active apostolate, unencumbered by the strictures of enclosure. However, unlike other congregations, LSU chose to specialise in the education of girls in the 19th century. LSU sisters were available to establish schools for the poor in different locations, both urban and rural, in response to local needs. In 1830, Bishop Belmas of the Diocese of Cambrai moved de Brabant to the parish of Vred as curate. As had happened in Douai, de Brabant realised the need for education to start re-Christianising the community in his new parish. In July 1830, he transferred 2 staff from the school in Douai to Vred. The institutes in Douai and Vred continued to attract more applicants, thereby allowing the establishment of further foundations. Growth in the congregation was initially slow. 10 years after its foundation, there were just 10 houses. The most significant increase in the number of foundations occurred between 1846 to 56, with an additional 100 houses. De Brabant continued to establish new foundations of LSU in response to frequent requests from local clergy in northern France and Belgium. As the 19th century advanced, LSU responded to the need for their mission to expand in Europe and further afield to England and Ireland. The first LSU foundation established outside of mainland Europe was in Bath, England on New Year's Eve 1858. Within 3 years, LSU also had a foundation in London, initially in Camden and then moving to Highgate, where their novitiate was established. And just as here in Banagher, LSU sisters continue to have a presence in Highgate to this day. So the arrival of LSU in Ireland in 1863 coincided with the country's recovery from the Great Famine of 1845 to 52. In the decades following the famine, schools, colleges, hospitals, churches and cathedrals were being constructed in towns and villages throughout the country. The establishment of the LSU Foundation in Banagher can be attributed to the financial legacy of the Misses Anne and Mary Fox and the untiring work of local parish priest Father Egan. Miss Anne Fox and her sister Mary were the daughters of a lawyer, Mr. John Fox, and his wife Elizabeth. On the death of their parents, the unmarried sisters were left money, which was invested wisely, leaving the sisters comparatively wealthy for the time. Anne Fox died in 1845, followed 2 years later by the death of her sister Mary. Before her death, Anne had written a will, leaving a sum of money to Father Egan to be used to set up a convent and school for poor children. Anne's will stated, and I quote, "I give, devise and bequeath unto my friend the Reverend Kieran Egan my houses and premises situate in the main street of Banagher, that the same shall be set apart for the use of females of such religious order of the Roman Catholic religion in Banagher as shall educate the children of poor parents gratuitously. And I hereby give and bequeath unto the said Kieran Egan the sum of £1,000 sterling for the use of or in establishing, founding or maintaining such religious house or order of females in Banagher." Anne also included in her will a stipulation that the convent should be established within 10 years of Mary's death. Otherwise, the properties and the monies from her estate were to go to her other legatees. Other sources suggest there was a 15-year grace period after Mary's death, during which time Father Egan could encourage a foundation of female religious to set up a convent and school in Banagher. Some of the late Miss Fox's estate had already been used in 1862 to establish Crank National School for the poor children of both sexes of Banagher. With the 15-year grace period after Mary's death almost out, it is almost certain that Father Egan had already asked some Irish origin congregations to set up a convent in Banagher. The Mercy Sisters were already well established in the Diocese of Ardagh and Clonmacnoise in both Longford and Moate. The Presentation Order had numerous convents around Ireland, including in Rahan, located just 18 miles from Banagher. So it would seem they were either unable or unwilling to help the priest in his efforts to entice a group of women religious to establish a new foundation in Banagher. In October of 1862, Father Egan read an article in The Tablet, a Catholic newspaper, describing the clothing ceremony of 2 English postulants in a convent in London. The clothing ceremony involved a novice becoming a professed sister of the congregation. The convent was Highgate, and the congregation was LSU. The ceremony had been presided over by Cardinal Wiseman, who had earlier given de Brabant approval for the LSU novitiate in London in 1861. Father Egan wrote to Bishop Kilduff of the Diocese of Ardagh and Clonmacnoise on the 7th of November 1862, with an account of the article he had read in the Tablet, suggesting that this group of women religious might be suitable for a foundation in Banagher. Father Egan also asked the bishop to contact Cardinal Wiseman in London to inquire if the cardinal could use his influence with the sisters to request if they'd be interested in setting up a new convent in Banagher. And so the chain of letters started by Father Egan rapidly developed into extensive correspondence between the priest and the bishop in Ireland and various members of LSU in London, as well as the founder in Douay. By February 1863, just 3 months after the first letter had been sent by Father Egan, LSU agreed to the new foundation in Banagher. When Banagher Convent opened in July 1863, it represented the 163rd foundation of the congregation, and it was the 3rd convent opened by LSU in an English-speaking country after Bath and London. So led by de Brabant and Dame Anatoly Badger, the initial group of sisters arrived in Banagher in July 1863 to lay the foundations of LSU's Irish presence. And for the benefit of those unfamiliar with the term Dame, I should explain it was the preferred title chosen by the founder with which to address the teaching sisters. The use of the title Dame was to signify the congregation's charism of teaching. It was an abbreviated version of Madame, which was commonly used to address female teachers in schools in northern France and Belgium at the time of the foundation of the congregation. In fact, many sisters here in this room probably still recall that the title Madame was in use up to the 1960s. However, back to the original founding sisters. So while archival records detail the contributions of the superior Dame Anatoly, The identities of many of the original sisters in LSU Banagher Convent remained unrecorded. They had been lost in the historical narrative of the congregation. My research uncovered the names and histories of many of the founding LSU sisters in Ireland. By revealing these hidden lives, this study highlights the essential role of women religious in the education of young Catholic children in 19th century Ireland, and it examines their legacy, which has survived into the 21st century. During the 19th century, new foundations of women religious communities were generally opened with at least 3 sisters. However, the names of many of these women have vanished from historical records. During my time looking through archives, I uncovered an example of how this can happen in a congregation such as LSU. From the start, I was struck by the absence of the names of all 3 LSU Banagher founding sisters in any of the records. Until recently, the names of 2 of the 3 women who established the convent here in Banagher remained hidden in LSU archives. Yet the names of all the founding sisters of subsequent LSU foundations in Ireland, in the Banagher, in the Bower Athlone and in Killashee, were readily available in several archival documents, but it was not the case for Banagher. So part of my research was to reclaim these women for history, to identify the members who have variously been referred to in different documents as, and I quote, the little band of sisters, the small colony of nuns, the heroic band of women, or just simply a few sisters. As soon as the foundation in Banagher was given their approval, de Brabant and Mother General Eleanor Lebrun in France began the process of selecting a suitable sister to lead the new mission. Neither envisaged any difficulties in arranging a superior. However, by May of 1863, serious issues emerged for LSU in their efforts to source a suitable sister to head the new foundation. The original plan was to transfer a sister from a convent in Liège in Belgium to Banagher as superior. However, the local bishop refused. Permission was just not granted. Correspondence from LSU Douay to Father Egan in Banagher announced they would have to forego the mission, as it was proving very difficult to get a suitably qualified teacher. In common with other French congregations who were expanding their missions overseas at the time, LSU experienced a lack of suitably qualified women. In this case, they needed an English-speaking member who could be placed in charge of their new convent and national school. At the time, there were very few sisters who were of English or Irish extraction. The vast majority were still predominantly either French or Belgian. And just for the record, the first Irish entrant to LSU was Marie O'Donoghue from Dublin, and in religion her name Dame Imelda, who entered in 1864. Despite these difficulties, LSU eventually succeeded in finding a suitable candidate for the role of superior in Banagher. A 21-year-old English sister who was based in Douay, named Mary Jane Badger, in religion Dame Anatolie, was chosen to head the new foundation. Mary Jane was born in Birmingham on the 16th of November 1841. She was orphaned at a young age and, along with her brother, was placed under the guardianship of an uncle who was a Benedictine monk. After completing his schooling, Mary Jane's brother entered the Carmelites, where he received holy orders. Meanwhile, Mary Jane was sent to a Franciscan convent in England. When she finished her education with the Franciscans, she entered the novitiate in the convent. However, the contemplative nature of the community did not suit her, and ultimately she chose not to take vows. In 1861, her uncle visited the Benedictine Abbey of St. Edmund in Douay, and while he was there, he heard about de Brabant and his LSU congregation. After consulting with de Brabant about his niece, Mary Jane, Dame Anatolie, entered the novitiate of the LSU Mother House in Douay on the 24th of September 1861. By February 1862, while still in the novitiate, Anatolie was teaching English in the boarding school which was attached to the Mother House. In August of the same year, she was assigned as a helper to the Mistress of Novices. Then, in the early summer of 1863, less than 2 years since she had entered the congregation, Anatolie attended a teacher training college in Liverpool for 2 months. And by July, she was en route to Ireland, aged 21 years, as superior of LSU's first Irish foundation, where she remained for over 20 years. So who were the other two sisters in the little band, the heroic band of women? The second sister of the trio was Mary Ann Rawkins, name and religion Dame Damarisa, born in England on the 31st of November 1842. Damarisa entered the congregation in April 62. Similar to Anatoly during her novitiate year, she also taught English, and she served as a household manager in the LSU convent in Bourbourg, France. In 1863, she was sent to London, where she worked at various tasks in the convent in Highgate. And by July, also aged 21 years, Damarisa was on her way to Banagher with Anatoly to teach in the newly established LSU Convent National School. These two young, relatively inexperienced women were in charge of St. Rhinus Girls' National School when it opened in September 1863. LSU enrolled 176 girls, which included all the pupils from the local Girls' National School and the girls from Crank National School, both of which closed that year. Classes were divided between Anatoly, who had senior classes, and Damarisa, who was responsible for the junior classes, with the latter providing instruction to, are you ready, 110 pupils. As previously explained, Damarisa was just 21 years old when she was sent to Banagher and had only been a member of the congregation for a year. She was almost entirely unqualified to teach in a national school, especially given the consistently large numbers of pupils under her care. Consequently, it may help explain her departure from Banagher in April of 1864, less than a year after her arrival. In a very short period, LSU sisters established very good relationships locally with parents, which we've already heard about from Evelyn, notwithstanding their being addressed in the French Madame rather than sister. It is possible that parents in Banagher were aware of other continental congregations, such as the Dominicans and the Faithful Companions of Jesus, who were already established in Ireland. These communities of women religious had built up a strong reputation for excellence in education provision. Therefore, it's possible to suggest that Catholic families in the town placed a high value on convent schooling. LSU sisters were providing education to many female children who would otherwise almost certainly never have attended school. The improved access to national schooling for girls was due to LSU's commitment to providing free education to poor children wherever the need existed. No child was excluded because they weren't able to pay the small fee of 1 penny per child per week. When the Convent National School opened, a local newspaper announced that the sisters provided, and I quote, a useful and sound education. They were required to deliver the programme of instruction laid down by the National School Board. The core subjects of the National School curriculum included reading, writing, spelling, grammar, arithmetic and geography. Girls were also given instruction in needlework in the hope that these useful skills would make them more employable. In addition to delivering the core national school curriculum during the 19th century, LSU sisters in Banagher provided instruction in extra subjects such as drama, singing, piano and French. Evidence of these extracurricular activities emerged in April 1880, when senior pupils from the Convent National School participated in a concert performing a play by a French author. Household management of the fledgling community in Banagher was entrusted to the third member of the little band of sisters, Elizabeth Manning, name and religion Dame Marie Vincent, born in Shuckburgh, England on the 1st of April 1825. Elizabeth entered the congregation in 1847, aged 22. Over the next several years, she worked in various household roles for the congregation in several convents in France and Belgium. On the 22nd of July 1863, she travelled to Ireland with de Brabant, Anatoly and Damarisa to establish the new foundation in Banagher. There she worked as a helper for the household and as an assistant for various classes until 1877. Aged 38, and with 16 years of experience in different convents, including LSU's French novitiate in Caen, Marie Vincent was a valuable asset to manage the new foundation in Banagher. A local newspaper announcing the opening of the convent and school in 1863 reported that the sisters, and I quote, provide education to all classes of female youth. The report continued that while the order originated in France, its members were not all French. It described the three sisters who had arrived in Banagher as English, and again I quote, ladies of the most finished education, perfectly competent to impart to young ladies the highest class of instruction. Elizabeth Sweeney, name and religion Dame Adrienne, although not one of the original three founding sisters of the Banagher mission, nonetheless played a significant role in the early years of their convent and school. With just 1 year as a member of the congregation, London-born Adrienne was 27 when she was assigned to Banagher in November 1864. She taught music to boarders as well as teaching girls in the National School, where she had replaced the original founding member, Damarisa. Except for a brief period when she returned to London to teach piano, Adrienne remained in Banagher until her death in 1870. She was the first LSU sister to die in the convent and is buried in the grounds of St. Rindus Church, where she is the first of 11 sisters named on the plaque outside the church. Another sister sent to Banagher with Adrienne in November 1864 was Grace Williams, name and religion Dame Mary Nicholas, again born in London and aged 37. Mary Nicholas remained in Banagher for almost 3 years as a class teacher. The first mention of postulants in Banagher Convent is from July 1864, within a year of opening the convent. Anatoly had accepted 2 postulants into the new community, much against the wishes of Father Egan. The priest was not at all pleased with Anatoly's decision, and he suggested in a letter that she had not consulted or asked for his opinion. And I quote, on this or on many other matters as religious, at least in this country, are wont to do with their chaplains. Father Egan was somewhat aggrieved with the sisters, notwithstanding the fact that it was he who had invited them to Banagher in the first place. In April of 1863, before the sisters had even arrived, Father Egan suggested a number of possible alterations to the original buildings which were to be used for classrooms. However, LSU politely declined his offer of help, in stating, and I quote, "Let us do nothing at our future home in Banagher before the time of the sisters' arrival." It didn't help that the alterations to the classroom, suggested by Father Egan, were also recommended by the first inspector to visit the National School in October, just weeks after the school had opened. Father Egan pointed out that if the sisters had only listened to him at the time, they would have saved money on the renovations. One of the postulants was Irish-born Dame Mary Albertina, Mary Hearns from Clonline, Kings County. Mary Albertina worked in the kitchen in Banagher until 1866. Afterwards, she continued to perform household duties in various LSU convents, London, Bath, Dunkirk and the Mother House. In July 1873, Mary Albertina returned to Banagher to the care of her family, and she died some months later. At various times between 1864 and 1873, 5 other women of Irish birth worked in Banagher. Dame Patricia, Bridget Smith, from Killinkeer, County Cavan, joined the community in August 1866. Patricia spent 30 years in Banagher, where she was assigned different roles, including teaching in the Senior National School and the Day School. Patricia also took on the unofficial role of acting superior from 1890 to 91, in addition to her regular school duties, while the congregation was attempting to find a suitable replacement superior. The following year, 1867, another 2 Irish sisters were sent to Banagher. Dame Mary Antonia Rose Malone from Ballyloughlow, County Westmeath, taught first class in the boarding school, remaining until her death in 1872. Mary Antonia was the second sister to die in Banagher, and her name is also included on the plaque outside the local church. The second sister to arrive in Banagher in 1867 was Dame Frebroni, Ellen Hines, from Clonascra, Kings County. Febroni worked in the kitchen in Banagher for 2 years. Another teacher for first class in the National School was appointed in September 1869, Dame Benedicta Rose Anna Macaulay from Moat, County Westmeath. Benedicta taught in Banagher National School until 1877, and then sometime before 1890 she was put in charge of one of the day classes. The fifth Irish woman to work in Banagher in the founding years was Dame Martina Rose Redigan from Clonmacnoise, County Offaly. Martina replaced Febroni working in the kitchen from 1869 until 71. The place of birth of these women suggests that a cluster of vocations came from areas close to Banagher Convent, and it is possible that these women had attended LSU Banagher either as boarders or day pupils. It was not unusual for a number of sisters from one family to join the congregation. 3 Duffy sisters from nearby Rahon in Kings County were one such family. Anna Duffy, in religion, Dame Jeanne Sophie, she entered LSU in 1872, aged 18. 3 years later, 2 more girls in the family entered the congregation. Teresa, in religion, Dame Marie Stanislas, aged 17 years, and Brigitte, in religion, Dame Marie Albertine, aged 15. Now, at 15 years old, the youngest sister would not be entered to formally enter the congregation. She would have to wait until she was 18 years old. Jeanne Sophie had a varied life in the community, teaching piano and English in several LSU schools. She then taught French in Athlone and Killashee, where she also acted as the sous-superior or vice-superior. Marie Stanislas served the community in many different roles, moving to Killashee during Second World War bombings in London. She died in Killashee in 1943. And the youngest of the 3 sisters, Marie Albertine, like her older sister, also taught piano and English in Calais and in several LSU schools in Belgium. In the 19th century, novices who entered a religious congregation typically paid a pension or a dowry. This money was intended to defray the costs of the novices' expenses while in the novitiate. On a practical level, money from the dowry was invested, and the interest could be spent by the congregation, leaving the principal available to be repaid if the novice chose to leave. Unlike other congregations at the time, LSU had no specific requirement for a dowry to be paid. It was considered a voluntary contribution, which the entrants were free to augment during their time in the novitiate. Women who wished to enter from poorer families were accepted without a dowry, and they were often given a loan from LSU with no requirement to repay it if they remained in the congregation. And although it might be expected that most of the women who received financial assistance became teachers, this was not always the case. For example, the aforementioned Mary Albertina was the second Irish-born woman to enter LSU in 1864, with a dowry of £26 paid by the congregation on her behalf. 2 other sisters, Dame Georgina, Lizzie Redigan, and Dame Mary Veronica, Bridget McGuinness, also received financial assistance from the congregation. Georgina was born in Clonfanlock near Clonmacnoise, County Offaly, and she entered LSU in 1871 at the age of 19. Given the proximity of Clonmacnoise to Banagher, which is approximately 15 miles, it's reasonable to assume Georgina was a student in Banagher Convent Boarding School. As a past pupil, it would help explain the decision of the congregation to pay her expenses. Georgina's dowry amounted to 600 French francs, which was approximately £25, for her 2 years' pension, and another 600 to supplement her trousseau. Following her vows, Georgina looked after the dormitories in St. Joseph's Highgate. Subsequently, she was assigned to various houses in France, including the Mother House, where she fulfilled different household duties. By 1913, Georgina was in the Bower Athlone, in charge of the sisters' dormitories, where she remained for a further 15 years. Dame Mary Veronica, born in English, Kings County, entered in 1873, and her 2-year pension of 800 French francs, approximately £32, was paid by LSU. Similar to Georgina, Mary Veronica was living close to Banagher, so again we may assume she was a former pupil of the convent. From the time of her profession, Mary Veronica was a cook to various LSU convents in England. Both women had skills and expertise in areas outside of teaching, which the community both needed and valued, thereby fulfilling a different yet necessary function for the congregation. There were at most 6 sisters in Banagher Convent during the first decade of the foundation. Each member of the community was multitasking, balancing responsibilities between the Convent National School, the boarding and day schools, and household duties in the convent. In 1881, 6 women were listed as members of the community, each with her own area of responsibility. Dame Mary Benedict Bergen taught in the infant school, and she was also music mistress. Dame Mary Bridget Ryan taught in the boarding school. Dame Maria Joseph Murphy was the cook and housekeeper, and Dame Benedicta Macaulay looked after national school rolls and did manual work. Dame Patricia Smith taught the upper national school, and Mother Anatoly was described as doing a bit of everything. The arrival of LSU in Ireland in 1863 happened by accident rather than design, as the congregation had not sought to expand their mission to Ireland at the time. The parish priest in Banagher Kings County discovered their presence in London and extended an invitation to them to establish a convent and school for poor Catholic females in the town. In accepting the invitation, LSU joined a growing number of French congregations who expanded their mission to Ireland in the 19th century. However, unlike other French congregations, LSU had a broader approach to the education of young Catholic children, as they established their girls' boarding and day schools in Banagher within months of opening the National School for Poor Girls. In anticipation of the opening of a boarding school for young ladies, a report in the Freeman's Journal announced, and I quote, "All the branches of modern female education and accomplishments, such as fit ladies for the highest spheres of society, are taught." Access to secondary education for girls in Ireland was somewhat restricted in the middle of the 19th century. At the time, there were several female religious congregations offering a boarding school option, while others were providing second-level education in fee-paying day schools. Alongside the more widely known Dominican and Presentation nuns and Ursuline orders, LSU was providing secondary schooling for girls of the middle classes. Competition for boarding schools in English and continental convents was reserved for wealthier upper-class girls whose families could afford to send their daughters abroad. The limited availability of second-level schooling for girls from aspiring middle-class families in Ireland meant that the arrival of LSU in Ireland was very welcome for those families of more modest means with ambitions for their daughters' education. A prospectus for the boarding school from the late 19th century reads as follows. I think it's kind of worth it to get an idea of what was going on in the convent. It's entitled Convent of La Sainte Union, Banagher, Kings County, under the patronage of Lord Bishop of Longford and the Reverend Clergy of the Diocese. The religious of the above community receive young ladies as boarders. Their principal care is to give to their pupils a superior English and French education, and to implant in the minds and hearts the principles of solid virtue. The establishment is agreeably situated in a very healthy part of the county, commanding a beautiful view of the River Shannon. The convent is spacious and airy, with an extensive garden and playground. The course of instruction comprises Christian doctrine, the English and French languages, history, geography, arithmetic, natural philosophy, and plain and ornamental needlework. A quarterly report of the health and progress of each young lady is transmitted to their parents, and the fees for the year were £20, paid quarterly in advance. Piano, an extra £3, I nearly said euro, washing, another £2 per annum, and finally, singing, dancing, German, Italian, all taught on moderate terms. Each young lady must be provided with 3 pairs of sheets, 3 pillowcases, knife, fork, and silver spoon. A uniform is required. In an unusual move at the time, LSU also established a preparatory school for young boys aged 4 to 12 years in Banagher Convent in 1881. Anatoly had been asked by a parent of one of their girl boarders if the convent would take the girl's brother as well. This was done in consultation and with the permission of the bishop, on the understanding that boys would be kept separate from girls for classes and more generally throughout the day. There were other boys' prep schools in Ireland at the time, such as Clongowes Wood College in County Kildare and Blackrock College in Dublin. However, these colleges typically did not accept very young boys in their boarding schools. For example, Clongowes admitted boys aged 7 to 14 years. The boys' boarding school was not a new venture for LSU sisters, as they already had a background of teaching boys in England and in their French schools. Subjects taught in the prep school included elementary reading, writing and arithmetic, tailored to the needs of the very young boys in attendance. Additionally, the older boy boarders would have had somewhat different subjects to girl boarders, with a greater emphasis on mathematical subjects, algebra, geometry and Euclid. The older boys would also have studied French and Latin. Therefore, LSU broke new ground in Ireland by becoming the first congregation of female religious to establish a fee-paying boarding school for young Catholic boys in Banagher in the 19th century. Well done, LSU. And just before I conclude, I do want to return to the remaining sisters whose names are on the plaque outside the church. And I do apologise in advance if this is a little bit like a roll call. However, I suspect that generations of Banagher people have probably walked past this plaque over years, knowing little or nothing about the people behind the names. So although they were not really attached to the first foundation or the founding years of the convent here in Banagher, I think it's time they got a mention. The first name on the plaque is that of Sister Adrienne Sweeney, who was, as I mentioned earlier, the fourth sister to join the community in Banagher, where she taught for many years. The second name is Sister Marie Antonia Malone, whom I also spoke about a little earlier. The next name on the plaque is that of Sister Mary Norbert, Nora Rafferty. Mary Norbert was sent to Banagher in late 1887 or early 1888. She was cook in the convent for a very short period, as by October of 1888 she was listed as an invalid in the Bishop's annual report. And Mary Norbert died 2 months later in December, aged 24 years. Next on that plaque is Sister Mary Catherine Bridget Connolly from Killiney, County Galway, who arrived in Banagher in 1887. Mary Catherine taught in Banagher Girls' National School until 1892. Next, Sister Frances Catherine Wright, born in Ballyjamesduff, County Cavan, taught in Banagher Girls' National School from 1888 to 1902. Sister Mary Basilia, Nora Purcell from Ballingarry, County Limerick, was in charge of the infant section of the National School from 1890 to 1912, practically up to the time of her death. Sister Ange Marguerite, Maria O'Brien, was from Ballinasloe. Ange Marguerite entered the congregation in Banagher Convent and went to Douai for her novitiate training. Afterwards, she worked as a porter and in the refectory in several LSU convents in France and Belgium. Ange Marguerite arrived in Banagher in 1877 and she looked after the girls' and boys' dormitories for many years. Sister Gregory, Ellen Walker from Finney, County Westmeath, assisted the novice mistress with the postulants in the novitiate in France for several years. After her arrival in Banagher, she worked as a porter and in the refectory of the convent. The ninth name on that plaque is that of Mother Josepha Lizzie O'Neill. Elizabeth, who was known as Lizzie, was a boarder in LSU Highgate from 1881. Her father, John O'Neill, was the original architect for the Barra Convent in Athlone. O'Neill would frequently mention his daughter Lizzie in his correspondence with LSU Highgate in relation to progress or otherwise on the building project in Athlone. Between February 1881 and March 1883, there were accounts of how pleased he and his wife were that Lizzie was doing her best for the sisters. They had heard good reports of her from many different sources. In another letter, again after discussing the progress on the building, O'Neill mentioned local newspapers which he had sent to Lizzie, and he hoped she was permitted to read them. And just so you know, she was allowed to read the papers. Then finally in March 1883, by which time Lizzie had entered the convent, O'Neill referred to as Mary Josepha, her name in religion. Sadly, however, the correspondence between O'Neill and LSU finished at that time, as John O'Neill died unexpectedly in April or May. Josepha was one of the founding sisters of the Bar at Lone when it opened in 1884, and she was also superior in Banagher from 1913 to her death in 1918. The second last name on the plaque is that of Sister Frances Saviour, Ellie Kiley. Frances Saviour started teaching in the infant boys class in the boarding school in 1891. And the final name is that of Sister Alban Lizzie Dunn. Although Alban was born in New York in the 1901 census, she was one of 17 sisters living in the Bar Convent in Athlone, and she was listed as speaking both Irish and English. In 1907, it was New York-born Sister Alban who was teaching Irish lessons to all the classes in the National School in Banagher. She had been moved to Banagher from Athlone sometime previously, and in 1907 she was also teaching girls and boys in Banagher boarding school. She was still teaching Irish in LSU Banagher in 1914. In a report of a concert given in Banagher Convent in the King's Chronicle, it suggested that Sister Alban should be justly proud of the participants, as their Irish had the correct bloss. There is one name that I believe is missing from the plaque, even though she's not buried in Banagher, and it is that of the first superior, Mother Anatolie. She died at the age of 42, having dedicated half of her life to Banagher Convent and School. Despite enduring serious health problems, particularly in her later years, she remained committed to overseeing the completion of new projects for the National School. On the 31st of July 1882, Anatolie wrote to Bishop Woodlock from Bath, where, much against her wishes, she had been sent by LSU to regain her health. In her letter, she explained that the congregation had decided she was too ill to return to Banagher. Soon afterwards, she wrote again to Woodlock, expressing, and I quote, "You remember, dear Father, how pleased, how eager even I was to die in that dear convent." This always gets me. "And truly nothing could have induced me to leave it." Ultimately, she was transferred to Erith in Kent, where she died in 1883, far from her beloved Banagher. I love that bit. The first LSU community in Ireland, the Little Band of Sisters, were, I believe, truly a heroic band of women. They had a difficult and often precarious first 10 years, during which time their continued presence in Banagher was not guaranteed. And despite their difficulties, LSU Sisters grew their mission in Ireland. In the process, they gained many Irish entrants, who in time would assume significant leadership roles in the congregation internationally. LSU Sisters' enduring commitment to the education of Catholic children, whether in their national schools for poor children or in their day in boarding schools for young girls and boys, left a lasting legacy which survives to this day.
Tá áthas an bheith an seo hanach anió le an ócáid starúil seo agus cohordigus dana LSU an 200 bhliain. Thankfully, I didn't have to walk up an escalator that broke, but I think the teleprompter is broken, so I'm going to have to read this. I was teaching here from 1988 until the amalgamation with St. Ryan's in 2007. But I think I was always destined to be part of the LSU family, and I wish to share my thoughts with you on the spirit and ethos of the sisters. I remember precisely the first time I heard of the LSU nuns. I was 6 years old of age, and I was going through Irish Town in Athlone in my parents' car when they said, "The bower is just up there on the left." Now, you see, we lived near Athenry, where my father was from, and my mother was from Dublin, so we frequently went to my granny's in Fibsborough. So every time we passed through Athlone, I was told, "The bower is up there." But it took me a while to realise that it was a school run by nuns. Now, later I thought that they might send me to the girls' boarding school, and I innocently looked forward to that. Now, when I was in my late teens, I joined the FCA, the Reserve Army, and nothing else got to do with the initials of it. But us hard-working defenders of the state were mainly stationed for summer training in Athlone. And on my time off going to the Athlone swimming pool, I actually passed the Bower, and the wonderful convent and school became more a reality. After secondary school, I attended UCG, as it was known then, where I met my future wife, Aideen. Qualified as a history and geography teacher, and my first permanent job was in the Maris College in Athlone, just across the road from the Bower. 3 months later, I started dating that girl I had met in UCG, who also happened to be living in Athlone at the time, and she was teaching in Forban. But I discovered that she had once previously lived in Athlone, and she had attended both the day school and the secondary school in the Bower. So now, not only was I going out with a Galway girl, I was going out with an LSU girl. And indeed, my daughter, or our daughter Emer, later went to the Bower as a day girl, continuing the relationship. While in Athlone, I played hurling with the team there, and we often played challenge matches in Offaly, and we frequently played a side called Sainte from a totally unfamiliar place called Banagher. So it seemed like I was getting a little bit closer to something. After 8 ecstatic years teaching in Athlone, there were educational cutbacks by a minister I will leave nameless. Now, I like to think it was a case of last in was first out. Others will say they got rid of me. But anyway, sent to Banagher I was, and not very happy. So I landed in LSU secondary school in September 1988, but ultimately it was the move of my life. And as they say, that baits Banagher. And don't forget, there's a beautiful, fantastic, wonderful book on that very phrase by none other than James Scully and Kieran Keenan, and it is more than worth getting. I left the Maris with 500 boys, a staff of 28 men, all married, and 4 Maris brothers, to join a school and staff in LSU that was as varied as life itself. There were day girls, girl boarders, day boys, a staff of men and women, young and not so young, married and single, lay and religious. There was 5 nuns teaching, and many others with roles in education, like in charge of books, boarders, meals, supervision, you name it, they were involved. It was a microcosm of life itself. I was immediately welcomed into and felt part of a large family. The staff room was the original kitchen of the convent from 1863. Needless to say, I didn't realise that at the time. Staff meetings were held with everybody sitting around in a circle. Everyone contributed, everyone discussed, conclusions were drawn, decisions were made, though not all would agree with the decisions, but they were adhered to. I didn't always concur with them. The first lunchtime detention I supervised, there was 2 boys on detention. One for short hair, one for long hair. The girls' white socks had to be pulled up to the knee. The boys couldn't wear the popular white toweling cotton socks as they looked at odds with the navy trousers. All PE jerseys had to be the school blue jersey, not your local club or county, and God forbid if it was an English soccer jersey. How short was a short skirt? Nose rings or no nose rings? And who would be the head boys or head girls? But at the round table, we slowly, and in some cases more rapidly, sorted out these issues to people's satisfaction. It was in the spirit and ethos of the sisters. Diversity and discussion were always allowed and encouraged. The longer I stayed in LSU, the more I realised that this spirit and ethos were the modus operandi of the sisters. It was a spirit of development, adaptation, change that kept them to the forefront of education in its widest sense of the word. It put them firmly ahead of trends in education. Students were listened to. There was always visionary people willing to move with the times and ahead of the times. It was student-centred, wide-ranging education as envisaged by the founder of the order that we honour today. The LSU, as we know and have so informally heard, came to Banagher in 1863 and opened their national secondary schools in what was a brave and daunting move to a rural county Offaly town. It was in line with the spirit of the order to bring education to the poor. It was in line with the ethos of the founder, Jean-Baptiste Brabant, to foster education as the key to the future. Indeed, he visited the school shortly after it was established, and their work saw the schools develop and succeed. Newspaper and inspector reports show a community that grew rapidly and successfully, and as we know, in 1884, they extended and opened the school in Athlone, the Borough. There was always a wide range of subjects taught, and that continued in my day. In my early days in LSU, computer studies were taught when most schools didn't have computers. When the number of boys grew, woodwork and tech graphics were introduced. Girls could take these subjects, and boys could take home economics. There was a wide range of languages: German, French, Spanish. You could also take Latin as an additional subject. Applied maths and economic history were other options available to students. Indeed, if there was a demand for a subject, the school facilitated it, and oftentimes they created a demand where the school saw that it would be worthwhile. Now, not everybody loves school. Not everybody is suited to school. And LSU was no different. However, there was a wide range of activities and emphasis in LSU that made it more bearable than most other schools. The whole area of extracurricular activities, the school always led by the LSU spirit and ethos, and the belief that school and education was not only academic. As far back as 1902, I have seen newspaper reports of school tours. On one occasion, they hired a steamer on the Shannon, and the whole school went on a picnic trip to Killaloe, County Clare. In the 1950s, I found a report of golf being taught to the boarders, and a list of over 20 names of girls that were participating. And it was the only school in Ireland, needless to say, that was encouraging golf among the girls. The spirit and ethos of forward thinking. There was tennis, basketball, volleyball, hockey, camogie, hurling, soccer, you name it, athletics, the list goes on. LSU students could even represent the school in equestrian events. But I was reminded as a spokesperson on one open night to make it quite clear that they had to provide their own horses. The cultural activities in LSU were renowned. Musicals, drama, debating, music classes. They were all part of the educational ethos of the school. When I joined the staff in 1988, Mr. Bianco was there. He was a man in his 70s who taught a range of musical instruments to the boys and girls. And he still found time to play in goals for the staff versus student hockey matches. I remember a Christmas play that year when the teacher directing the play included in it a hilarious character called Father Chittabonga. He was a black African priest on the missions to Ireland. Now, how far-seeing and ahead of the curve was that? There were a myriad of small things associated with LSU, and as we know, the small things are the big things. The Christmas dinner hosted by the nuns was a fantastic occasion of sharing and appreciation of the work and effort of all the staff in the convent and in the school. There was pancakes on Shrove Tuesday. chocolates on St. Valentine's Day, buns and cakes following examination results, buns, cakes and all at the end of term staff meeting, and many other treats on many other occasions. When I landed in Banagher, I remember one member of staff who did all his teaching in LSU, from his HDip to his full-time job. A man reared in the spirit and ethos of the sisters, and he helped me settle into the job. But he needed a hand with the hurling teams. So he asked me, would I get involved? I kindly declined, because the last thing I want to do is get involved in extracurricular activities coming from Athlone, and I want to go home to a wife and 2 small children the minute the bell sounded at 4 o'clock. But the following week he came back and he suggested to me, Aaron, she'll go to the match and it'll give you a break from class and a bit out of the way. But don't bother training them. Of course he knew the outcome. We won the match, I got involved in training, and 31 years later, in the best spirit and ethos of the LSU sisters, I was still training teams. So I would like to thank him. He knows who he is, and so does everybody else. As a staff, LSU has always been a wonderful place to work. The management and nuns and principal always took great care when employing teachers and various other staff to select people who gelled well together, but who spoke their minds and were true to the ethos of the sisters, who rose to all the challenges and put education, be it academic or otherwise, to the forefront of their work and commitment. But we enjoyed ourselves. You've never enjoyed a lunchtime until you have tried to eat it to a choir of whoopee cushions in the background. Have you ever tried to play bullshit bingo during the course of a staff meeting? Arranged all your after lunch classes to be covered while 4 of you went off to watch a World Cup soccer match? Drank wine through the end of year staff meeting, or gone to the Cheltenham races, been spotted on television when you were supposed to be sick? Now, despite these and many other entertaining escapades, the overall theme was we trusted and respected each and every one. There was also a fantastic ancillary staff in the school and convent, next to none. Secretary, cook, caretaker, or cleaner, all working for the betterment of the students, the whole community, as envisaged by the ethos of the founder. When the amalgamation of LSU took place, LSU and St. Ryan's Vocational School came in place in 2007. I was asked to write a history book of the nuns in the school in Banagher since 1863. And there are a few copies over there. And if anybody would like one, you can put a contribution into the container there, and Kathleen Gleeson, who is the chaplain of the school at the moment, will contribute to various local charities and things like that. But I learned so much more about the role of the LSU order and education in Banagher. I interviewed elderly people who had attended either the national or secondary school run by the nuns, and in some cases had attended both. I got letters and stories from former nuns, staff and students. It all showed how they valued the time in the school. It wasn't all a bed of roses, there was many thorns. For some it was the loneliness away from home, the large dormitories, the food, the rules and regulations. There were times, but they all expressed a balance, a preparation for life, an education for life, and a sense of self-worth and resilience. Now, sometimes I feel that in today's world, there are so many people charged with looking after our students, so many to help them, protect them, that this sense of resilience is being lost with the race to do so much for them and to protect them from adversity. Now, there is adversity out there, but the students in former times seemed to develop a sense of certain resilience which stood to them in later life. And that was reflected in the letters and the interviews with the people at that time. Following the amalgamation, it is important to have Sister Gretty Sweeney teaching in the new school in Banagher College, Colosh as a link with the LSU sisters, carrying forward their ethos and spirit into the 21st century. And indeed, since her retirement, she has served in the Board of Management, and again, it is an important link with the first school going back to 1863. The LSU has meant so much to myself, Aideen, and our children. Aideen even subbed in the school in Banagher in 1992. I had broken a leg and was out on sick leave. Aideen happened to be on a career break from Furban, where she was teaching, and she was minding our two young children. She was also a history and geography teacher, as was I. So I rang Sister Mary to suggest that she could cover for me. Aideen maintains that I said to Sister Mary that until she got somebody better. Sister Mary kept her for the 2 months. And my son Owen also, he taught here in Banagher College, Colosh and did the H-dip here. So the links with the nuns and the order and the sisters was thus maintained. So, after a lifetime of association with the LSU sisters, I can say, as can tens of thousands in Ireland, England, and the many countries around the world where the LSU has schools, that my and their experience was ever positive. Their spirit, their ethos, love of education, ideals, care and generosity and concern for students, staff and community have always fulfilled the wishes of their founder, Jean-Baptiste Brabant. Thus, it is more than fitting that we honour the bicentenary of his founding of the Order. I have been privileged, as have so many, to have worked with and have been educated in the widest sense of the word by them, and we owe a great sense of gratitude to Jean-Baptiste and his wonderful order of nuns for his and their foresight and work on a project that is still ongoing 200 years later. My whole experience with the LSU came full circle as I served on the Board of Management of LSU Banagher following my retirement, and served 2 terms on the Board of Management in the Bower in Athlone, that I first heard of at 6 years of age. So you could say that the LSU Order has defined most of my life, but what you couldn't say is the love of my life. That would be Aideen, the Bower girl I met in Galway in 1976, was reacquainted with in 1981, got married to in 1984, and dare I say, nearly took my job. So, Cohorgicus, the Menal Realta, thank you very much for listening to me, but as I say, it is the spirit and the ethos of the LSU sisters that has been so valuable and so important, not just locally, but nationally, and best of wishes for your coming year of celebrations.
Good afternoon, everybody, and first of all, I'd like to say heartiest congratulations to all the sisters on this wonderful occasion of your bicentenary. Well done, and heartiest congratulations to you all. It's lovely to see so many friends and former delightful colleagues here this afternoon, and to reacquaint with them and to have a chat is really wonderful. It's a great privilege and a pleasure and an honour, really, for me just to share a few brief memories that I have of the Sainte Union Sisters since I came to Banagher many years ago. In 1976, I started teaching here in Banagher Vocational School, and from the very beginning, I have indelible memories of a congregation of sisters who exuded kindness, strength, warmth, charity, and had a remarkable influence on education and faith in our catchment area and far beyond. The congregation was and is held in the highest esteem. The progressive nature and forward thinking of the LSU Order included the provision of a superb hall for school shows and concerts. And my colleague George Smith and I, we founded the Scout troop in town, and we decided to organise a Scout concert. In the absence of a suitable facility in Banagher, we decided to approach the then principal, Mother Angela, God rest her soul, and after careful consideration she said, "I don't normally allow the use of our hall. However, since it's yourselves who are requesting it, I'll make an exception." She was a formidable, delightful lady, and we proceeded with the most successful, albeit very amateur, performance enjoyed by the whole community. This typified the philosophy of the LSU sisters, service to the community. Now, our musical prowess, I'm afraid, could never compare with that of Sister Gerard's, but we did our very best. The cooperation between both schools continued, spearheaded by many superb principals from both second-level schools. I recall some of our teaching staff being seconded to teach in the convent and vice versa, when subject choice and demand required, a precursor to the total amalgamation in 2007. When Assumpta and I married, we moved from Birr back to the Harbour Road. We have heartfelt memories of the warmth of welcome and friendship that we experienced from so many unforgettable LSU ladies. Sister Marion, Sister Josie, Sister John, Sister Cecily, and many others who have gone to their eternal reward. We have beautiful memories of attending Mass in the small chapel in the old LSU site and in the Brabant House. To unite in prayer with the sisters was such an intimate, special, and very spiritual experience. We always felt so welcome. Our two now adult children, Des and Wirren, have wonderful memories of the sisters from their primary school days. They both remember the deep faith of Sister Kathleen, who always helped the children with their prayers, which, thank God, has stood them both in good stead. And Wirren remembers Sister Maura arriving to the school to teach the children how to make St. Bridget's crosses. Such enthusiasm and joy were always felt as she would excitedly proclaim in admiration, "God bless your hands. What an uplifting lady to meet, any time, anywhere." Following the amalgamation of the two second-level schools, I enjoyed the comradeship of two bright, fun-filled and delightful teaching colleagues, Sister Goretti and Sister Margaret, both of whom continued to give of their time and their talents even after retirement. Sister Annette and Sister Helen have both had immeasurably positive influences, both in the school and further afield in their missionary work in Tanzania and Haiti. On their return to Banagher, it was always a great pleasure to listen to the reports from the altar. Two unbelievably powerful and selfless women. The gift of the magnificent rose-stained glass window to St. Rina's Church is a perpetuation of the prayerful presence in and exceptional contribution of the LSU sisters to our community. In recent years, we have met so many incredibly warm, spiritual and exceptional ladies from the LSU community in the Brabant House. Sister Marion, Sister Claire, and so many others who, please God, will continue to enrich our community for many, many years to come. I would just like to say, Goramila Mahagiv to the sisters, félicitations et merci, and thank you very much, and the very best of luck for many, many more years of success.
I'd like to thank very many people today, for those who have helped us, to the school and Mrs. Lily Keenahan for welcoming us to Coláiste na Seanna, to Donald Moran and Gary Kelly for ensuring everything was well organised. We thank especially to our two speakers, Dr. Geraldine Nolan, and for choosing to search our story, to do such research and such whatever, and for her wonderful account. To Kevin for his presentation on the more recent days. To Jim for his kind words. So we've made a nice combination, the three of them. Our thanks to Bishop Paul for being present with us, to Father Pat, to Josephine and the choir this morning at Mass, and to all who joined us this morning for the celebration in St. Rhinus. We thank Mr. Fergal Nannery for seeing to the sound system, and we know that because of his expertise, we'll be able to share this day with all our sisters in other parts of the world. You've got the list already. UK, USA, France, Belgium, Tanzania. Annette, I'm sure, will be listening to us all. And for all the other people around Cameroon, Argentina. It's interesting for me anyhow to note that many people from around here, listening to Geraldine's account, have gone and lived in other countries and served people in far-stretched places too. So thanks to all who helped in any way to run this day, to Trina who made the cake, to the people who served the teas, to everybody. Special thanks, a very special thanks to Mr. James Scully, our local historian. His enthusiasm for the project has been boundless from day one. And we would have become unstuck a few times, I'd say, James, without you. So really, thank you sincerely and very, very much. So now we're going to proceed to the old cemetery to lay a wreath on the graves of Mary and Anne Fox below. It's only down the road, 5 minutes. And thanks to the men's shed who did great clean-up work on the cemetery. I see one or two representatives here. We'll see that when we reach the graves of the Foxes. So that's it, I think. I don't have anything else to say, do I? So we look at the past with gratitude. We look to the present, we appreciate it. And we look to the future, which is in God's hands. So let's hope that we will be open to his plans, his dreams, as Father Pat said this morning. Thank you.
I have a great friend of mine called Stephen O'Callaghan. We're both taphophiles. A taphophile is a person who loves graveyards, particularly monuments and epitaphs. But Kevin, when I was recording the inscriptions down there, Stephen came down and he says, Stephen was recording Bor and the military barracks graveyard in Crinkle, and he said, James, I really love your graveyard. I said, what? I really love your graveyard. At 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, when I get the sweet smell of Angelo's chips. That's why I love your graveyard. So out we go, out to the right, down to Church Street, and right again. And you could easily go past this graveyard. And very often when I was writing the book during COVID, I would contact people. I'd say, I've nearly finished the book on the graveyard. Which graveyard? Coolfin or St. Paul's? No, I said, the one in the heart of town. There's no graveyard in the heart of town. Well, it's there behind 19th century and 20th century housing. And it's only visible, really, from the Super Value car park. All right, but we'll get a good look at it. Yeah, 5 minutes, and we should only be there for about 10 minutes. All right? Right, we're here to talk about the Fox sisters. I'm not going to go over the history, but I'm going to read a poem. During COVID, we were in and out, it was coming and going, but anyway, at one stage I was able to come here with a poetess from Dublin called Jessica Traynor. She got a commission to write a suite of poems on Banagher. So I took her to all the various sites, the Brontes, St. Paul's, the Martello Tower, Hawks, Flynn's. Well, you have to have some interiors, you know. I mean, you can't be outside all the time. It's bad for the skin. Anyway, she wrote 16 poems, and she wrote this poem about these two box tombs and the Fox sisters. poem is called Foxes in the Graveyard. On soft days, a flash of furs as a vixen mounts our tomb's table to sniff worn lettering. Below us, the town's back windows, dark and unsure, look away to where the malting's rusting roofs rub the horizons. Banagher may turn its back, but we perch on its shoulders. Dangle our legs in drizzle and watch boats mooring on the River Shannon. The odd strolling tourist might feel the skin prickle at our glance. In 45 and 47, we left the world grown thin and hungry. And now, if you just turn around and look, you'll see the schools. And now, as we doze above the schoolyard, children's games drift to our sleep, and death is a snowflake melting on Shannon waters. Famine, just a word in a book. So, yeah, it's that lovely idea of Anne and Mary. I almost picture them, well, nudging each other as they listen to the laughter of the primary school children and the secondary school children, which comes in here. I often hear in the morning, because the sun is the best time for reading the inscriptions. And I just imagine them nudging each other and say, well, didn't it all turn out great? Wasn't it well worth doing? And just to think, you know, there was only a matter of days left when the 15 years or the 10 years or whatever the period of time would have been up, and it mightn't have happened. So I love that Geraldine's picture this morning of that whirlwind of letters between the bishops and the cardinal and the parish priest, Kieran Egan, that whirlwind that made it happen. And, well, I think, well, that just beats Banagher, that happens so well. So now we're going to have the laying of the reeds.
Is there writing on the graves?
Yeah, yes, there is writing on the graves. It's very simple. It's done in false relief. In other words, it's not incised. Everything is cut away and they're sort of raised. And they're both almost identical. Here lies the body of Mary Fox of Banagher, and here lies the body of Anne Fox of Banagher, who died February 1845, age 70-something, and the other one is who died April 1847, age 70-something as well. So they're identical, and they are magnificent tombs. They are really, I don't want to go into the pilasters and quarter sunbursts and all that, and rosettes, but they are great. I'll just tell a story about Tom McGee and Jim Madden. We're up here, and we were over there trying to read a tombstone, and someone took a picture, and the two lads are up on the table tomb with their backsides sticking up in the air, right? And the question is, what word? We failed to read the inscription, so I said we'd start at the bottom and work our way back up, because we were desperate. What word ends in Q-U-E-R?
Conquer.
No, it wasn't conquer. It was exchequer. Now, this fellow was something of the exchequer in Dublin, and we were able to look him up in the records, and we got him. But anyway, someone took a photograph of Tom and Jim and myself with our backsides protruding and sent it to the staff room up in the secondary school. Said, "This is what happens when you retire." Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, yes, go ahead. Right, Mary, right, great. And Gerard, well done. That's right, that's lovely. That's lovely. Right. Stay there. Just stay.
Ave Regina, Mater Miseria. In his book, Follow Your Dream, the writer, Father Peter Hannon, uses the metaphor or image of the acorn that slowly grows into a majestic oak tree. He refers to the dream within the acorn that directs the growth of the oak tree. The tree does not grow at random. It is shaped by the storms, the wind and the rain, and the changing of the seasons. The growth of the oak tree comes from the dream built into it as it gradually grows and puts down deep roots. This morning we gather with joy and gratitude in our hearts to celebrate the unique Les Sainte Union dream that has unfolded and flourished for the last 200 years. Just like the mighty oak tree, the LSU sisters' story or dream has been shaped by a vision, by the storms and struggles, the love and loyalty, the goodness and generosity of many wonderful people. There have been many twists and turns during the last 200 years, but the LSU dream has always been deeply rooted in God's dream and in God's call to love and to serve the Lord. Just as there is a record of the oak tree's growth written in its rings, there is also a story and a record of how the LSU dream branched out from small beginnings. God's providence and God's purpose was always central to the LSU dream, always inspiring and directing the dream within, and inspiring those who responded generously to God's call. The words of the book of Deuteronomy come to mind, how God has carried you as a parent carries a child all along the road that you travelled on the way to this place. Or the words of the prophet Jeremiah, I know the plans I have in mind for you, plans for peace and not disaster, reserving a future full of hope for you. That's the dream, that's the trust that we celebrate this morning. Today is a Mass in thanksgiving for the last 200 years, and for a few moments I would like to borrow and to reflect on the acorn, the majestic oak tree, and the dream within, which neatly fits in to the story and journey of the LSU sisters. Firstly, the acorn, which reminds us of Father John Baptiste de Brabant, the founder of the Les Sainte Union congregation. In a small place called Douai in northern France, Father de Brabant planted the acorn of Holy Union, inspired by his devotion to Jesus and his mother Mary. That was the beginning of the dream, and slowly others were attracted and called to live and to profess this holy union and to proclaim what is called an incarnational spirituality, close to Jesus and close to Mary. Secondly, the majestic oak tree, with its deep roots and strong branches, reminds us of how the Les Sainte Union dream branched out in different directions over the last 200 years, from France and Belgium to Great Britain, to Banagher, to Athlone, Killashee in County Kildare, Dublin, and further away to Tanzania, Cameroon, Haiti, Burundi, Argentina, America, the West Indies, and other places. Like the great oak tree, the LSU sisters have provided shelter and shade, prayer and possibilities, education and empathy, opportunities and options to thousands of young people, to the poor, the wounded and the weary, and to all those who crossed their path. Today we remember how the LSU sisters came to the town of Banagher to establish their first convent and school in Ireland. When Anne and Mary Fox died in famine times back in 1845 and 1847, they left their money and their property to be used for the purpose of founding and funding a convent and a school for the education of the poor in this parish and surrounding areas. Father Kieran Egan, the parish priest at the time, was appointed executor of their will and also given the task to look for a community of religious sisters to establish the school and the convent. Eventually, his prayers and efforts were rewarded, and in February 1863, the first LSU sisters arrived in Banagher to begin their great work of teaching and witnessing to God's dream and God's plan for them. For the next 144 years, from 1863 to 2007, the LSU sisters were the heartbeat of knowledge, the beacon of learning, the harbour of thought, the bridge of understanding, the anchor of hope, and the compass of wisdom and faith in these parts. For their wonderful dedication and commitment to education and loyalty to the Holy Union of Jesus and Mary, we say thanks today. The LSU Sisters' footprint has shaped the fabric of this community. This town has been richly blessed since the arrival of the sisters back in 1863. Today we salute and acknowledge their great work and great example. The LSU Sisters always experienced a warm welcome and generous support from parishioners and neighbours of this parish. And so to all who have worked, supported, respected and helped the sisters in any way, past or present, we say thanks to you for enabling the majestic oak tree to flourish, to grow where the Shannon waters flow. Thirdly, the dream within. Our lives are directed by a dream or plan that God has built into our lives. We differ from the oak tree because the fulfillment of the dream is not automatic. We are invited to get in touch with the dream that lies deep within us and to allow God's hand to guide our steps. The Bicentenary of the LSU Sisters congregation encourages all of us to reflect on the many dreams and that shape our lives. In all our lives, there are golden dreams and bright dreams, but also faded dreams and broken dreams. This morning, we mark 200 years of fulfilled dreams in the minds and hearts of the LSU Sisters and of their founder, Father John Baptiste de Brabant. We remember how their dream is deeply rooted in the Holy Union of Jesus and his mother Mary, and how the Holy Union continues to inspire the LSU Sisters to live, to love, to pray, and to hope in the eternal dream of heaven. The words of St. Paul in the second reading today captures the spirit of the dream within when he says, as a person dedicated to God, we must aim to be saintly and religious, filled with faith and love, patient and gentle, fight the good fight of faith and win for ourselves the eternal life to which we were called when we made our profession and spoke up for the truth, for justice and concern. Today we remember, we celebrate and we give thanks to God for the last 200 years. And we ask Jesus and his mother Mary to continue to bless the lives, the dreams and the mission of the LSU congregation at home and abroad. Be proud of what you have achieved. Be proud of all those who have gone before you. May you continue to follow God's dream for you so that the Holy Union of Jesus and Mary will continue to be the root and branch of all you pray for and all you profess each day. On this September day, the acorn, the majestic oak tree,